I was the daughter they told to eat in the bathroom during family dinners. They said my face made guests uncomfortable. My story hit 2 million views yesterday. They called begging me to take it down. I'm Rena. 32 years old, single, no kids, self-employed illustrator living in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And a few days ago, my story blew up. 2 million views. Thousands of comments. DMs from therapists, artists, even a small publisher asking if I'd ever considered writing a memoir. A woman in Georgia told me she read my post aloud at her divorce party. It hit a nerve. And now my phone won't stop ringing. My family, the same people who spent most of my childhood pretending I didn't exist, are begging me to take it down. I was born in Schroon Lake, New York. Tiny town, pretty enough in the fall, depressing as hell the rest of the year. My mother, Teresa, was the queen bee of suburban perfection. Always in beige sweaters, always had a mug of coffee she didn't actually drink, always putting on a show for the neighborhood. My father, Ellis, worked for the town's municipal water department. Didn't talk much. Unless something was broken or someone was watching. Then he'd become this charming, folksy type that strangers seemed to love. And then there was Chase. My older brother. 3 years ahead of me and everything I wasn't. Tall, golden-skinned, green eyes, good at everything, always surrounded by attention. My mom used to say he looked like he stepped out of a J. Crew catalog. I think she meant it literally. Sometimes I wondered if she even realized she had another child. I was born with a condition called Treacher-Collins syndrome. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It affects the way bones and tissues develop in the face. Mine didn't develop quite right. Small jaw, cheekbones underdeveloped, ears never fully formed. I wore hearing aids from the age of 5. But the real damage wasn't in my ears. It was in the way people looked at me, and more often, didn't. My earliest memories are blurry, but one stands out. I must have been 4. I'd made a drawing of a flower family in crayon, all big happy faces. I remember holding it up at the dinner table, and Teresa, without even looking up, said, "Not now, Rena. People are eating." From then on, the message was clear: when people were around, I wasn't supposed to be. Family dinners with guests became a nightmare. I wasn't allowed at the table. When I was little, they made it seem like a game. "You get to eat upstairs," they'd say. "Isn't that fun?" They'd bring my plate to the hallway bathroom, place it on a folded towel on the toilet lid, and close the door. The first time, I thought it was special. Like camping. By the time I was 10, I knew exactly what it was: shame. I remember Thanksgiving when I was 11. The pastor from our church came over with his family. His youngest daughter stared at me when I walked into the room with my plate. Her mouth dropped open. Teresa stepped between us quickly and said, "Rena, go upstairs. Use the back bathroom this time." Her voice was low but sharp. You know the drill. She didn't want me to ruin anyone's appetite. That's what she told me once. That my face was a little hard on people when they're eating. The thing is, she never said it with hate. That would have been easier. Teresa said it with this weird, quiet pity, like she was doing me a favor by hiding me. And Ellis? He just nodded along. Always nodded. Chase? He avoided me completely. He was too busy being perfect. The only time I remember someone treating me like a person was when Chase brought home his girlfriend Petra. She had warm skin, thick curls, this confidence I couldn't understand. She asked who I was. Teresa told her I was just someone who helps out around the house. Petra looked confused. She said, "She's your daughter." "She's our younger one," Teresa said, like I was a forgotten coat in the hallway. Petra was the only person who ever came up to my room and talked to me. She asked what I liked, complimented my drawings. Said she thought I was funny. She was kind in this real, unforced way. It scared me. I wasn't used to it. But that didn't last. She stopped coming around. I asked Chase what happened and he snapped, "She didn't fit in." That was all he said. I found out years later, through a mutual friend, that Petra had confronted Teresa. Told her it was wrong the way they treated me. Called them abusive. After that, Chase dumped her. Just like that. By the time I turned 18, I was gone. I took my scholarship and moved to Albany for college. I thought I'd finally escaped. But even then, the weight of everything still followed me. I didn't date. Barely made friends. I didn't know how to trust anyone who said something nice. I thought compliments were just setups for cruelty. It wasn't until my mid-20s that I started reconstructive surgery. 3 major operations. 1 on my jaw, 2 on my ears and cheekbones. Painful. Long recoveries. I paid for it myself. My family never asked why. Never offered support. Not once. The only time I got a call was when Chase's wedding invitation got lost in the mail. That was the excuse. My mom left me a voicemail saying, "We figured you wouldn't want the attention anyway." That was the moment. The moment I realized they were never going to change. I built a new life in Brooklyn. Quiet, but mine. I worked freelance. I had a few friends, mostly online. No partner, but I started to feel like maybe I didn't need one to be whole. Then one night, about 3 weeks ago, I was scrolling and saw someone post about family trauma. The kind of post where people spill their guts. I don't know what came over me, but I started typing. I didn't name names. I didn't even say where I was from. I just told my story. I hit post. And then went to sleep. When I woke up, it had 60K upvotes. By the end of the week, it had over 1 million views. People weren't just reading it. They were feeling it. Sharing it. Commenting things like, "I cried in my car during lunch reading this. My mom made me hide in my room when her friends came over. I get it. Please write more. I'd read a book about this." And then came the emails. From Teresa. From Chase. Even from Ellis. Each one angrier than the last. "Take it down. You're humiliating us. This is libel. You've twisted the truth." Except I didn't. I told the truth they thought I'd never be brave enough to say out loud. I wasn't done yet. I didn't take it down. Instead, I posted an update. Nothing dramatic. Just a few lines. "To those asking if my family has contacted me, yes. They have. No apologies. Just pressure to take it down. Apparently, the truth is bad for business. Thanks for reading." That single update got another wave of attention. Thousands more people found the post. It hit the front page. Again. And that's when it got real. My cousin, Celine, who I hadn't spoken to in a decade, messaged me on Facebook out of nowhere. She wrote, "Your mom is spiraling. She's convinced you destroyed her reputation. I always believed you, by the way. I saw how they treated you. I was a coward for never saying anything." That message hit hard. Because I remembered Celine. She was the only one who used to pass me extra rolls at Christmas dinners and sneak me candy under the table. I had clung to her little acts of kindness like life rafts. And then she disappeared from my life around the same time I moved out. I always thought she forgot me. Turns out, she didn't. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. Some were kind. Others were, less so. A woman from my hometown messaged me, her name blurred out but the location unmistakable. "I went to school with your brother. I remember you. They never let you go on field trips, right? I always wondered why. I'm so sorry for not saying anything." Then came a direct message from a name I never expected, Petra. Yes. That Petra. Her message read, "Rena. I know it's been years. I just read your story. I cried. I always wondered what happened to you. I never stopped thinking about that day. I tried to speak up and got shut out. I'm so proud of you. You're not invisible anymore." I sat staring at that message for a long time. The 13-year-old version of me, locked in that bathroom with my plate of cold turkey and canned cranberries, would never have believed that one day people would care. That I wouldn't have to beg to be seen. Meanwhile, my family was going through what I can only describe as image management hysteria. Teresa had apparently been part of a local social club for high-end realtors in upstate New York. Suddenly, her name wasn't listed on their website anymore. I got a screen grab from someone showing a comment thread from one of the club's Facebook posts where a woman wrote, "Is this the same Teresa who made her daughter eat in the bathroom?" It was petty. And delicious. Chase's LinkedIn page went from active to private. Someone, probably him, took down his professional headshots. I'd heard through a friend of a friend that one of his clients at the finance firm dropped him. They couldn't be associated with controversy. Wild how fast these people who built their identities on appearances had it all unravel over one anonymous post. Except I wasn't anonymous anymore. Someone recognized me. A woman named Heather, who I'd gone to high school with, reached out. She remembered how I used to read alone during lunch and eat from a thermos in the library. I always thought you were just shy. I didn't know they were treating you like that at home. I wish I'd done something. You were always drawing these incredible pictures. I should have said something nice. I cried after that one. I didn't even know I had that many tears left in me. The thing is, when you grow up hiding in plain sight, when your entire existence is carefully managed to avoid making people uncomfortable, you learn to make yourself small, quiet, convenient. So when the flood of validation started, I didn't know what to do with it. I started getting interview requests. A podcast asked me to come on and talk about navigating childhood trauma and reclaiming identity. A journalist from a women's magazine wanted to feature the story in a piece about internalized family cruelty and the aesthetics of shame. I declined them all, at first. Not because I didn't want the story out there, but because for the first time in my life, I got to choose what to share. Not Teresa. Not Chase. Not Ellis and his silent head nods. Me. But the drama didn't stop there. One night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Rena? The voice was instantly familiar, even after all these years. Ellis. It had been over a decade since I'd heard his voice. It was gravelly. Older. But somehow still blank. I just want to say, things got out of hand, he said, as if I'd spilled milk, not unloaded a lifetime of pain. I said nothing. He continued. Your mother's been sick over it. She's barely sleeping. We didn't think it would reach so many people. Now we're sorry. No, I was wrong. Just we didn't think it would reach so many people. I almost laughed. I never named you, I said calmly. No, but people know. Maybe they should. A pause. Look, he said. I know it wasn't perfect. But your mom was under a lot of stress. Your brother had his whole future ahead of him. She was just trying to protect the family. I had to physically bite my lip not to scream. Protect who? I said quietly. Certainly not me. There was silence on the line. And then he whispered something I never thought I'd hear. You were always the one I didn't know how to love. That stopped me cold. Not because it helped. But because it was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me. And even that was about him. I hung up without saying another word. He didn't call back. Later that week, I received a letter in the mail. From Teresa. In her tight, curling cursive, on that same monogram stationery she used to send out Christmas newsletters with photos I was never allowed to be in. Dear Rena, I saw your post. I've read every word. And I have cried more tears than you could ever imagine. We did what we thought was best. I see now that we failed you. But I also think you've been unfair. You never considered how hard it was for us to manage everything. I hope one day you'll forgive us. And maybe take the post down. Love, Mom. She still didn't get it. She still thought this was about what they endured. About their shame. She still thought my post was an act of spite, not survival. I folded the letter and burned it in the kitchen sink. And then I wrote another update. This time, I named no names. But I included more detail. Not because I wanted revenge. But because people needed to see what systemic silence looked like. What it meant when a child was raised in the shadows. What it did to a person to be treated like a stain on the family photo. The comments poured in again. Support. Anger. Love. A woman in Missouri messaged me to say her own daughter had Treacher-Collins syndrome. She used to hide her from school events because she was scared of stairs. After reading my post, she said she enrolled her daughter in a drama club. She's going to be a sunflower in the school play, the woman wrote. She asked me if her face was too weird to wear makeup. I told her she's more beautiful than anyone I've ever seen. That message destroyed me, in the best way. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just a ghost in a bathroom with a plate on her lap. I was a story someone read to their child before bed. A week after the second update, I noticed something different in the messages I was receiving. They weren't just from strangers anymore. They were from people back home, people I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. People who had walked past me in the grocery store without saying a word, people who stood next to me in choir but never asked why I wasn't at the end-of-year banquet, people who smiled politely at Teresa and never questioned where her daughter was. Now, they wanted to talk. Some were apologetic. Genuinely. Like Mr. Dalton, our old neighbor who used to coach Little League. He emailed me to say, "Rena, I remember your drawings on the sidewalk. You'd use chalk and draw these wild castles and animals. My daughter loved them. I should have noticed you weren't at the block parties. I'm sorry." Others were performative. One woman messaged me just to say, "I had no idea your family was struggling so much. Your mom always seemed so put together." It's funny. That word, put together. I used to hear it all the time growing up. Teresa made put together her whole personality. Hair always blows out. Makeup is subtle but flawless. She wore those structured pastel cardigans like armor. She always had a curated smile when she handed out gift baskets to the neighbors on Christmas Eve. And I used to watch her from the upstairs window, wondering what it felt like to be the version of her she presented to everyone else. That perfect mask was starting to crack. I got another message. This one was from an old teacher, Mrs. Kaufman. 6th grade English. "I owe you an apology, Rena. I always noticed something was wrong. You were smart. Quiet. Withdrawn. You turned in beautiful essays, but your eyes were always tired. I should have asked more questions." I stared at that message for an hour. She was the first adult from my childhood who said something like that. Who didn't justify, or deflect, or try to balance the blame on both sides. She just said, "I should have seen you." I didn't. I'm sorry. It made me realize how deep the silence went. How far-reaching the damage had been. My family didn't just erase me, they convinced others to stop looking too. Then, something unexpected happened. A journalist from a small but reputable digital magazine reached out. She'd read my posts and wanted to do a feature about hidden children, a term I'd never heard before but instantly understood. Kids who are isolated within their own homes. Hidden out of embarrassment, shame, stigma. She asked for an interview. Not recorded. Just background. She said I could remain anonymous if I wanted. No pressure. For a few days, I didn't respond. Then, I remembered something. My first journal. I had written in it obsessively from age 8 to 15. It was just a cheap spiral notebook I kept under my mattress. I'd scribbled things like, "Mom says no one wants to see me today. Chase had a party. I stayed in the closet. I wish I was the dog. At least they let him sit in the living room." I dug that journal out of a box in the closet. My hand shook as I opened it. The pages were crinkled, some stained with tears. One entry hit me like a punch in the chest, age 12. I heard Mom say to her friend that she wishes she could Photoshop me in real life. I think she was joking. But it didn't sound like a joke. It wasn't. I emailed the journalist and said yes. The interview was long. I cried through most of it. Not because I was sad, though I was, but because it felt like exhaling after years underwater. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was giving it shape. Giving it context. The article was published 2 weeks later. The headline was simple, "The Bathroom Daughter, When Families Choose Shame Over Love." It wasn't just about me. It included stories from other people too. A boy in Texas who was made to eat on the back porch during holidays because he had Tourette's. A girl in Ohio whose mom made her wear sunglasses indoors to hide her lazy eye. A boy in Florida who wasn't allowed to invite friends over because he had scars from a house fire. The article went viral. And then came the flood again. Only this time, it wasn't from a social media forum. It was the real world. A counselor from my old high school sent me a message through the magazine. She said they were reviewing policies about emotional health monitoring for at-risk students. They were using my story as a case study. A nonprofit for children with craniofacial differences reached out, asking if I would speak on a panel about visibility and representation. I hadn't left New York in months, but I said yes. The event was in Boston. A panel of speakers, all with different forms of visible differences, sitting on stage in front of a room of parents, educators, and students. When it was my turn to speak, I walked up to the podium, looked out at the crowd, and for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I told them the truth. About the bathroom dinners. About the silence. About the letter where my mother said, "You've been unfair." I watched a man in the front row, bald, with deep facial burns, wipe his eyes. A teenage girl with a birthmark covering half her face stood up during the Q&A and said, "Thank you." I always thought it was just me. Afterward, a woman hugged me in the hallway. She didn't say anything. Just held me. Her daughter, who had a cleft palate and thick-rimmed glasses, clutched my book of illustrations and smiled like I was a celebrity. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid, hiding behind the couch while guests sipped wine and pretended not to notice the missing daughter. I felt real. But the fallout back home wasn't over. Apparently, Teresa had started hosting these healing circles with her church friends. Someone sent me photos from Facebook, her, sitting in a living room full of women in beige and blue, clutching tea mugs, talking about grief and misunderstanding. Grief. As if I had died. No. I didn't die. I left. And they're only grieving now because their mirrors don't lie anymore. They're grieving the version of the story they used to tell. The one where I was quiet because I was shy. The one where I wasn't in family photos because I didn't like my picture taken. The one where I preferred solitude. No one believes that version anymore. Because I told mine. Loud. Unapologetic. And the more they tried to rewrite the past, the more people saw through it. It all started to feel like justice, not in a violent, explosive kind of way, but the slow, deep, quiet kind that settles in your bones. The kind you never expect to arrive because you've trained yourself not to want it. For the first time, they couldn't ignore me. They couldn't control the narrative. And that was the most powerful form of revenge I could have imagined. But it wasn't quite enough. There was one last piece I hadn't let go of. The family estate. A sprawling, two-story colonial-style house tucked behind a long gravel driveway in Scroon Lake. 4 bedrooms, a wide porch, a barn in the back that had been converted into a workshop Ellis barely used. It was the place where all the hiding happened. Where every closed door felt like a sentence. When I turned 30, a lawyer had reached out to inform me that my grandmother, Ellis's mother, had left me something in her will. A modest trust, a handwritten letter, and partial ownership of the family home. Apparently, she had quietly ensured I would inherit 40% of the property. To be fair, I hadn't touched it. For 2 years, I ignored the documents, let the legal paperwork sit in my inbox. I couldn't bring myself to face it. But now? Now I was ready. I contacted the lawyer again. Asked him to initiate the process of evaluating the property and scheduling a discussion with the other owners, namely, Teresa and Chase, who had taken full control after Ellis had a stroke 6 months earlier. A week later, I received a carefully worded email from Chase. No hi Rena. No pleasantries. Let's be realistic. You don't live here. You never liked this house. We've maintained it. If you want out, we can offer you a payout for your share. Fair market value. Clean break. I smiled. Because that's what they wanted. A clean break. A payout. A bandage over the wound. The same way they always handled discomfort, quietly, behind closed doors, wrapped in politeness and distance. I declined. Instead, I told them I'd be coming up to Scroon Lake to see the property myself. You'd think I said I was coming to burn it down. Teresa called. I let it ring. Chase emailed again. More aggressive this time. What's your angle? What are you trying to do here? I didn't reply. Instead, I made the 4-hour drive upstate. It was the first time I'd been back in over a decade. I brought with me my friend Daria, a real estate agent from Brooklyn with a razor-sharp eye and zero patience for nonsense. She wasn't just moral support. She was strategic. We walked through the house with a clipboard and camera. Teresa wasn't home, but Chase showed up, tight smile, tense jaw, wearing a Patagonia vest like armor. I hadn't seen him since I was 19. You're really going through with this, he said. I shrugged. It's just business, right? He scowled. Daria pointed out the aging roof, the outdated kitchen, the drafty windows. She made a point to talk numbers in front of him. After the tour, I asked to see the room that used to be mine. They'd turned it into a reading room, painted it a pale gray, and put a rocking chair in the corner. The closet still had a hook where I'd once hung my backpack. I stood in that room and said nothing. Just let the silence sit. Then I went into the upstairs bathroom. The one I used to eat in. It still had the same faded wallpaper. Same cracked tile near the sink. I took a photo. For myself. And then I made my move. 2 weeks later, I filed a petition to force a sale of the house. My lawyer explained it to them gently. Legally, I had the right to do so as a part owner. Unless they wanted to buy me out at a premium, the new appraised value post-viral infamy, they would need to list it publicly. I gave them a choice. Sell the house and split the proceeds. Or I'd move in. You should have seen Chase's face when he realized I was serious. Teresa tried one last time. She called and said, "You don't understand what you're doing. This house is your brother's legacy." I said, "No, Mom. It's mine too. You just forgot." They ended up selling. It took 4 months. The house was sold to a lovely older couple from Vermont who planned to renovate it into a bed and breakfast. I used my portion of the proceeds to open a small art studio and gallery in Brooklyn, a space specifically for kids with facial differences, chronic illness, or disabilities. A place to create without shame. Without hiding. We called it the Light Room. We have mirrors on every wall. I named one of the exhibition spaces the upstairs bathroom. Visitors always ask about the name. I tell them, it's where I learned to be invisible. So this is where we make sure no one else has to be. The gallery made the local news. Then a national feature followed. A week later, I got a typed letter in the mail with no return address. It was short. "I walked through your gallery. I saw the bathroom. I think I finally get it now. I'm sorry." Ellis, I didn't respond. Some things aren't for redemption. They're just consequences. My story is still up. Unedited. Untouched. It's taught me that sometimes, revenge isn't fire or fury. It's survival. It's healing in public after years of being erased in private. It's telling your story loud enough that it drowns out the ones they used to tell about you. It's building something beautiful out of the ruins they left you with, and then inviting the whole world in to see. And the best part? They'll never be able to say they didn't know what they did. Because now everyone knows. The daughter in the bathroom came out. And she took the whole house with her.